Okay, it's time. Let's start. So, yesterday we started, we had started the discussion about functions, right? So, I'm not sure if you guys noticed, but you might have seen that when it comes to functions, most of the time, when it comes to giving input arguments to functions, you were able to, like, most of the functions that you dealt with were able to work with different types of input arguments, right? In the print function I was able to give strings, also I was able to give integers, list, anything in it. Similarly for id function, type function, although there are exceptions, these specific functions like string function, integer function, they might have their restrictions, but you know most of the times when it comes to functions, they were not that much concerned about the type of the input, right? You were giving different kinds of inputs to the function. And like when it comes to the sorted function, you were seeing that like in that sorted function I gave multiple inputs in the same function, right? I was giving a boolean input also, and I was giving a list as an input also, right? So multiple inputs also I was giving. Multiple types of inputs I was giving at the same time. So functions don't have much to do with types, but then there are certain scenarios where, as I was telling you earlier, that whenever you have to do whenever you have to do a particular task, you can pretty much go to Google and search about that particular task, and Google will suggest you certain functions. But if it comes to certain tasks, so I'll show you some let's discuss some examples quickly. Okay, so for example, let's say you have a list, okay, and there are elements in it, let's say a, b, c, d, e. Okay, so there are elements in the list, right? So let's say you want to somehow use code to find out what is the index number of c. Okay, we have learned about zero based and negative indexing, and you can obviously you can count it out. But when it comes to dealing with lists which have probably 1,000 elements in them, 10,000 elements in them, then it is obviously not feasible to go and count one by one, right? So in those kinds of scenarios, those kinds of lists, how will you find the index of a particular element? Let's say you know that within this list, let's say you have a list of all your router names, for example. So you know that you have a, let's say, a site in Delhi or probably in Boston. So the name of the router is us underscore boss underscore r1, for example, right? So you have that site, for example, you know that particular router name would be there in the list, but you just want to find out where exactly in the list it is, right? So that is one example where you want to find out the index number of a particular list element. Then there could be other tasks like reversing a list, right? Like this is your list, you want to just reverse it, make it a mirror copy, so it will look somewhat like this. So don't get confused with the sorted function that we were using yesterday. In the sorted function, we were sorting the elements in a particular order, descending or ascending. But here I am talking about reversing. Whatever the type of order, ascending or descending, we are not concerned with that. We are just concerned however they are arranged. You just make it a mirror copy, right? So reversing a list, for example. Then probably let's say you have a float value, let's say 4.5. You want to convert it into a x/y kind of a thing, right? You want to convert it into a ratio, right? So you want to find out what is the ratio that when you will divide those two numbers x and x divided by y, when you do that you will get the answer 4.5. So you want to convert your float value into a ratio. Then probably converting a string, let's say you have a string a b c, right? You want to make it capital A B C, all uppercase characters. So there are these requirements, right, dealing with particular objects. So can anyone see what is the common trend here about all these requests or all these examples that I'm putting up here, all these different requirements that you might have? Do you see a pattern in these? Do you see something similar in these? Anyone? Is there any similarity between all these requests? Yeah.
We have to traverse the whole disk.
Yeah, but that is just about list, right? My other requests are about floats also. It is about string also. So
Built-in functions.
no, built-in functions is a different topic. I'm just asking, is there any similarity in all these requests? Do you see any similarity in these requests? Although these requests are all talking about different types of data, different types of objects, but is there still a similarity in these?
They're in list element, list element.
Okay, I'll tell you guys, no issues. So basically, if you look at all these requests, okay, if I'm talking about the requests here, okay, these requests of particular operations. These requests are very much concerned about the type of the object. Okay, in what other scenario would you want the index of an element? Would you want the index of an element in the case of a float? It doesn't make any sense, right? Would you want the index of a element in the case of a integer or in the case of a string? No, right? They don't make sense. Am I right? It doesn't make sense. That request, this kind of request will only hold true in the case of a list, right? When it comes to reversing a list, yeah, you might want to make a reverse of a string, probably of or of a number or something like that. But when it comes to reversing a list, generally we don't reverse any. We would not want to reverse anything else. Maybe in some scenario we might want to reverse a list, but reversing does not make sense when it comes to other types of values, right? Why would we have those kinds of requests of reversing a float value or reversing a integer value, right? So similarly, finding out the integer ratio of for a float value, right? This kind of request, does this kind of a request make any sense in the case of a string or in the case of a list? No, right? This request makes sense only when it comes to float values. At the max it can be integer values also, right? So these requests, if you look closely, they are not making sense when you try to change the type of data or type of object. Does that make sense? Is there anyone for whom it is not making sense what I just said?
Hi, can you just repeat that one more time, please?
Yeah, I'm just saying that let's take the example of finding out the integer ratio for a float value, right? So finding out the integer ratio does not hold true. Why would you want to find out the integer ratio of a string? Would you ever want to find out, like, does it even make sense? Does it no, right, Krishna?
Yeah, now I got it.
Yeah, so the whole request does not make sense if you just try to change the type of data. Whereas when it comes to functions, there also you will find some similarities. like rounding off will rounding, we were using round function to do a round off of a float value, so that will also not make sense when it comes to integers or strings. But still, most of the times what we were seeing in the case of functions is they were able to work with different types of data, different types of objects like list, float, and sometimes they were even able to take multiple types of data together. But then there are certain requests which only make sense when it comes to that particular type of object, right? So a particular request makes sense only when it is about a particular type of object, right? So for these kinds of requests or for these kinds of operations, what do we need? We need something other than functions, right? We need something different, because the request is very, very concerned with that type of object. Okay, so what we need in this case is something called methods. Okay, now what are methods? Basically methods will solve all these problems for you, but methods are also functions. It is a type of function that is very strongly tied to the type of object. Okay, strongly tied. Okay, strongly tied to particular type of object. It makes sense? Okay, fine. So let's look at some examples to understand this in more detail. Okay, so let's talk about some list methods. Okay, so let's take a list. Let's start working with a list. Fine. So we were just discussing finding out the index of a list, right? So let's say I want to find out the index of the string dad within this list. Okay, so what I can do is I can say the name, I'll first use the name of the list, that is fam. On the list fam, now listen to my wording very closely as I write this code, because that is how you will read the code in your brain, in your mind. When you will be reading someone's code, let's say some a line like this appears in front of you, how you will read it is that on the list fam I am running the method index. Okay, and I want to find out the index of the string dad within the list fam. Okay, and if I run this, it tells me the index number is 6. You can even count it, it will give you 6, right? So on the list fam I am running the method index. Okay, again let's try one more time. On the list fam I'll run the method index. Okay, 1.89, right? It gave me 7. So if I ask you one more question, that I told you one statement like probably a minute ago, right? That methods are also a type of function, right? So to this method index, if I ask you how many inputs have I given? Anyone?
One.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else who doesn't think it is 1?
To complete list we are giving.
Good. So actually the answer would be 2. Okay, so both of you gave one answer. Okay, so we are, if you think logically here, we are actually giving 2 inputs. Okay, first input is the complete list on which we want to run this method. Okay, and the second input that we are giving is the this input the quote unquote input that we are giving, which is the, in this particular case, is the element, right? So two inputs, if you think logically, we have given it two inputs, right? In a similar way, let's say I have another request that I want to add one element at the end of the list. Okay, I want to add one more element at the end of the list. This is what the fam list looks like currently. Let's say I want to add one more, or in other terms we can call it append one more element. So let's say I want to append.
Sir,
So
when
I'll,
we in the function case we put input
yeah,
arguments inside the bracket, right?
yeah. So
So
these are not functions exactly, right? These are
okay,
like functions, but these are not functions. These are methods, right?
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So let's say I want to append one, what do you say, element at the end of my original list. So let's say I want to append the value 1.73. Okay, so once I do that, I will have to check what is the new fam. So I'll run it once again. So as you can see, the fam list is modified and one value was added at the end. If you check once again, the fam list is modified permanently. Now coming back to that earlier discussion, if you guys remember, when we were adding newer elements to the list, what was happening there was we were not able to save it, like it was not changing in its place. We had to create a new variable and then save it, right? But here, using this method append, I was able to add elements, add an element, in this case one element, in the original list itself, right? Let's look at some more list methods. Okay, let's take another list. For example, let's take switch list. Okay, let's quickly go through these. So I have a switch list which has these four switch names as strings in it. So let's say I want to insert one element at position 5, which will be the ending position, but I want to do it in a positional way. Okay, so what I'll do is I will say switch dot insert. So which method am I using? It is not switch, it is switch list actually. It is insert method that I am using. I am running the insert method on the switch underscore list, and at position 4 I want to add S5, the string S5, right? And just to check, I will access switch list. Let's see. So the list is modified, and let's say at position between S2 and S3, that is at position 2, I will add S2.5, let's say. Okay, so I'll say switch list dot insert at position 2 S2.5. just to check, I will run it again. You see, so at particular positions I was able to add. How I was able to do it? I was able to do it because of a method. Okay, the original list I am modifying, if you look closely. Then let's say in this switch list I have another list called the, let's say I just call it more list, for example, which has these two elements in it, S6 and S7. What I want to do is I will say something like switch list dot extend, and I'll extend the more list to the current list, which is switch list. Just to check, I'll call it once again. Oh, sorry, I did not run this. So I was able to modify it. So I was able to add a new list, and I did not have to save it in a new variable. I was able to modify the original list itself. If I check the ID of this switch list at this point, ID of switch list at this point, the address will be same. Okay. So in this way, some of the things that we are not able to do directly with the list, we are able to do with the help of these things called methods. Okay. And adding a new list to the current list, appending elements, inserting elements at particular positions, all these things only make sense in the case of lists, and that's why we have to use list methods with it. Okay. Let's look at some different types, like some other types of methods. Let's look at string methods. Okay, let me give the heading string methods. So let's say I have a string which is name is let's say Liz. Okay, let's say I want to capitalize it. Capitalize means capitalizing the first letter. Okay, so if I run this, I am getting Liz with a capital L. Okay, so it got capitalized. Let's say but one more thing I want to tell you here, one important concept. If I check name, still name is the older value only which we started with. So in the case of strings, you will not be, once you create a string, you will not be able to modify it in its own place at the same memory location. So that is a difference between the fundamental objects and the complex objects. So basically at a high level there are two types of objects, right? Mutable and immutable. Okay, this is also sometimes they ask in Python interview questions also, quote unquote. The concept is about being changeable in place. You all understand when I say the word in place, right? Everyone understand? Is there anyone who is not understanding? In place, modifying in place. This remark. Is there anyone who is not understanding? Okay. So in place, still I'll tell you. In place means at the same memory location where when I defined, when I ran this line of code, at a particular memory location, this string Liz was created. But strings are immutable type of objects, immutable type of data. So what is happening is once it is created, it cannot be modified at that same memory location. So no matter what methods you run, whatever you do, you will always have to save it in a new variable after running the method. So to save, if I want to save this, if I just want to print it, just put it inside the print function, it will work. But if I want to save it, I will have to save it in a new variable. Clear? So the new variable will hold this new value with a capital L. Okay. So just remember mutable and immutable. Huh? Please explain what? It was not clear, Mukesh. Can you come again?
I am saying, can you please explain this thing one more time?
Yeah, I am talking about immutable and mutable objects. That is what you are asking, right?
Right.
Yeah, so mutable means list is an example of a mutable object. So what happened is when I created this list, it was created at a particular memory location, but I was able to change it at that same memory location. I was able to permanently modify it without having to create a new variable at a new memory location, right? So these are examples of mutable objects. String is an example of mutable objects. Mutable means changeable, okay, changeable in its place, right, in its place in the memory. Clear, Mukesh?
Yes, clear.
And then the other side of the coin is immutable objects. Once you create them, you no matter what method you use, no matter what operation you do, plus minus anything you do, you will not be able to change it. Okay, fine. So let's look at some more methods. Let's continue. So strings also come with the replace method. Okay, so let's say within the string I want to catch hold of z, within the string Liz I want to hold z and replace it with sa. Okay, so it becomes Lisa now. Similarly, let's work with another string. Let's say I have this variable iOS is equal to Cisco iOS XE software. So as you can see, while defining, it has all the different letters are, some are uppercase, some are lowercase. So let's say I want to make it all lowercase. Okay, so if you do iOS.lower, everything will go to lowercase. If I want to make everything uppercase, I can do that with the upper method, lower method. Okay, so similarly, let's say you have a num string, a string which has all numbers in it, like 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, so then you might end up with scenarios like these in certain cases. So let's say you want to, from your output of a device, you want to catch hold of a VLAN number, for example. So once you get hold of that value, it will be coming in as a string only. Although it is a number, it might be coming in as a string, because the whole configuration that you read from a device, it will be converted into a string only. Let's say you want to check if it is a number, although it is a string, but within the string if it is a number or not. So for that they have one string method called isDigit. Okay, so if you run isDigit, it gives you true or false. Okay, in this case it is true, because the complete string that you see here, it is made up of numbers only. Okay, but let's say if I have another string, for example something like AK-47, for example. Okay, so if I were to check it on this, it will be false, because all the characters are not numbers, right? So a lot of these methods exist. Okay, I've just barely scratched the surface. Like there are thousands of these methods. Okay, so when these different types of data or these different types of objects were initially defined in Python, they had certain properties based on which these methods were created. Okay, so that you can basically play around with these different types of data, because when you will be writing scripts and all, there is a lot of what the term that they use generally is massaging of data. Okay, you have to iron out your data or massage your data or modify your data slightly so that you can work with it. Okay, so let's say in the you have the router name, then you have the management like the loopback 0 IP is there, but while saving that particular router's detail in the database, you want to save it in a way that has the router name as well as the loopback address together. You want to put them together and then save it in the memory as a single string object. Then you will have to concatenate these two, you will have to add these two. So you will have to do some kind of operation. So one in a different output you will be getting the host name, in a different output you will be getting the IP address. So lot of these operations, little operations you will have to do here and there within your larger scripts, right? So you need to have a sense of these methods. So if you are dealing with two strings, if you are dealing with if you are dealing with lists, if you are dealing with any of the different objects that we talked about till now and that we'll talk about in future, have methods associated with them. Okay. And the way to find out these methods is again using Google. Okay. So to summarize the discussion till now, if I talk about functions, how do you write functions? You will, like an example I'll tell you. An example is type function, for example, right? Type of fan. So you have your function name, then immediately after you put your brackets, and here you put your inputs or input arguments or just arguments. But when it comes to methods, you will say something like fam dot index, or let's say the element that. So what happened here, the object on which you are going to run the method, and if that method requires further inputs, you will provide those as well. Okay. So you can see the difference in the two syntaxes, right? Just keep that in mind. This is how you run functions or call functions, and this is how you run or call methods. Is it clear? Any doubts?
Yeah, sir, when using replace from the method,
Yeah.
you change this to Lisa. Like if it has multiple characters of the, let's say Z, does it replace all of them or does it stop at the first one?
Good point. Okay, let's try that out. Okay, so let's say the name is something like Liziz. Okay, although these are the things that I want you guys to be curious about and try yourself also. But yeah, it is good that you are generating this kind of curiosity. But try it out yourself also in some of the simpler cases. If something is more complex, you can always come to me. Fine, your question is answered. It will replace both the times. Fine. Okay, so now let's proceed and let's do some practice problems quickly, and then go further from there. So what you have to do is you have to create this one variable which will have the string pool house in it. Okay, place. So what you have to do after that is you have to first convert it into uppercase using the upper method and store the result in place underscore up variable. Okay, then you have to print out both place and place up. You just see what changed. Then I want you to count the number of O's in the in the variable place by calling the count method. Okay, clear? Two things you have to do. Okay, start with creating this variable. Okay, so I'll do it now. Most of you are done. So what you had to do was, you had to create this variable place which was equal to the string pool house, right? Then you had to store the uppercase of this in the variable place up. Then you had to print both place and place up. Then I also wanted you to print the count of O's in the variable place. Okay, sorry, O's. These three things you had to do. Clear? Any doubts? Fine, let's move on. Let's look at the second problem. So I'm giving you a list. Okay, so in this list what you have to do is very simple list, area, straightforward. Let me put it in the chat also. So what you have to do is you have to use the index method to get the index of the element 20.0 from the list, then print this out. Then call the count function, call the count method on the areas list to find out how many times 9.5 appears in the list. Okay, and you have to print this out. Fine. So yesterday some of you were asking me that is there any I told you that I'll tell you about a website. So I found this website quite good, very simple yet very effective, right? So here you can just go to this website. I put the link in the chat also, practicepython.org. So here you can just go to the exercises section and you'll find all these exercises. So some of the exercises like they have done the rating using these chilies. So even for now, like whatever topics we've covered, for those topics just go and do the 1, 2, 3 chili problems. 4, 5 chili problems are a bit on the difficult side. Probably towards the end of the course you might want to do those, but for now, for list, for strings and all these things, you'll be good with the basic ones, right? So just go through this, and the problem, every problem has a solution also. So if you are able to solve it, well and good. Otherwise you can look through the solution whenever you get stuck. And even when it comes to the problem is like not given straightforward. There is a discussion that happens around the topic, so you can read about the problem in detail, and then you can go ahead and do it. So just wait a few more days while we are done with the important topics. So once we are done with the files topic, I think at that point you can go and start doing these problems. Is it clear, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so now I'll go ahead and do the problem that we were working with. So the areas list, so this was the areas list. What we had to do is we had to print out the index number of the element 20.0, right, it is 2. Then we also had to print out the count of how many times 9.50 appears. Sorry. Right. Here the answer is 1. Did someone till now notice that although I was saying that a particular method makes sense with only one type of object, but here I ended up using count with a string also, and here I used count with a list also. Did anyone notice that? Is that a problem or is it okay? Because I was saying methods are very strongly tied to the type of object, right? But here I am using the same method with two different types of objects, right? So let me tell you. Yeah, Roshan, you want to say something?
Even the index also, right? Like if you just
Yeah, right. So index method, where did I use? Did I use it earlier?
various dot index 20.0. We haven't used, but if you just use 10 also as like class.
No. Here index I am using with the list only, right? Earlier also I used it with the list only. Here also when I used index, it was with the list only, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So let me tell you that, although the name of this count and this count is same, and here I am using the count with a string place, I am running it on a string place, here I am running it on a list areas, okay, although the name is same, but these are like totally different methods, okay. So this method is defined someplace else. How this method will work, how what is the code inside this method is totally different from what is the code inside this. Fine. It is just that the name is same, because in programming they basically try to name things as logically as possible, okay, as understandable or as logically as possible. So in the case of a string also, we might want to count a particular character that appears in the string. In the case of a list also, we might want to count a particular element that might appear multiple times, right? So it is about counting, so they just named it count, but these are still different, so don't get confused, okay. And another thing I wanted to mention is that these what you say, strings have lot of properties that are very similar to lists. Later in when we will discuss the loops topic, there also I'll bring it up in one of the exercises, okay. So although one is like these are totally different types of objects, but in some cases you will see they will very with very similar code you will be able to do things with them, okay. Strings sometimes behave very similarly to lists, okay, in certain scenarios, okay. Let's do another problem quickly and then we'll proceed. So on the same list areas, you have to do one more problem, okay. So this time you have to use the append method, and first append 24.5 and then append 15.45 respectively to this list areas, and then you have to use the reverse method to reverse the order of elements in the areas list and print out both of these. Okay, fine. Okay, I'll start doing it now. So we are operating on the same areas list. So the first thing that you had to do is you had to append two values. First time it is 24.5, the second time it is 15.45. then you have to do areas dot reverse and then finally you have to print areas. We'll print the areas list once here also after these two appends. Fine. So as you can see, these two values got appended and then we have reversed it. Fine. Any doubts? So let's move on to the next topic. Okay, I just wanted to ask one more thing. Is like, does anyone feel things are going too fast or too slow, or everything is fine? What do you guys think? Guys, go one by one. Anyone? Yeah.
It is
It's
fine,
fine?
I feel.
Okay. And in Hindi there is a word called besharam, okay, which means shameless. So just be a little bit shameless, guys, okay, and ask any questions that you have. So you don't need to be shy of anybody. You all are sitting in different parts of the world. No one probably is ever going to even see each other's face. so you don't need to worry about your image here, okay. Just ask whatever you feel like, okay. Yeah, so the next topic that we are going to discuss is dictionaries. Okay. So dictionaries is, I would say, an advanced version of lists. Okay. Now, when it came to lists, every list would have comma separated values in it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and to access any particular value or any in the case of lists we call them elements. In the case we wanted to access any particular element, we would use something called their index numbers, right? Everyone agrees with this, I guess. So this was the scenario of lists, okay. But sometimes in certain scenarios, over the time people realize that it might be even better that instead of associating values with index numbers and storing them in a comma separated fashion, another fashion could be better for certain scenarios, and that could be in the case of a dictionary, where what you can do is you can have the dictionary which looks somewhat like this, okay. So you have these opening curly bracket and a closing curly bracket, and within that you have something called key and value pairs, okay. And how do you write a key and value pair? You say key and then right after key you will put a colon, and then you will put one space, and then you will put your value. Okay, so you can store your values with the help of a key. Okay, so now when you want to access the value, you will use the key to access your value. We'll see in a short while how we can do that, but now we don't need index numbers, we can just use keys to access our values. Is it clear? Now you might see that here in this particular example I am using all the keys as strings here, right? It is a very often seen to see that generally in the case of keys we will be using strings, but obviously it cannot just be strings. There are other types of objects that can act as keys, but there is a restriction there. We'll talk about that very soon. But when it comes to values, pretty much anything can be a value. Okay, so just like in the case of list, we can have a list of lists, we can also have a dictionary of dictionaries where the value is a dictionary. Okay, then the value can obviously be string, it can obviously be float, integer, anything, it can also be a list. Okay, so it is another example of a complex object where other types of objects can be the values that are there in the dictionary in this object. Okay, but when it comes to the keys part of it, the keys can only be non-modifiable, or what we just learned about, immutable objects. You can only have immutable objects as keys, or I should say non-modifiable objects as keys. And the choice for that is very obvious, that if you can access a value only with the help of a key, then in that case if someone was to go in and somehow change the key using some method or using some other way, however, with any trickery or any magic, if they were able to change the key, then basically how will you get access to that particular value, because the key got changed somewhere in the process of working with the dictionary. Okay, so let's say you started with a dictionary, then you have written 100 lines of code, in line number 50 someone modified the key. Okay, then whatever value was associated with it, let's say in line number 90, if you try to access that value with using that older key, you will not get the access to that value, you might get access to a wrong value. So the only way to get hold of your value is using the key. So in that case the approach was very obvious, that they have to use immutable or non-modifiable objects, right? So strings, floats, integers, all these can be your keys. Okay, now boolean also you can count in. Then lists cannot be your keys. Okay, lists can
So, sir,
be values. Yeah.
Here you are referring objects as a data types. So
Yeah.
objects are called as data types, right?
Yeah, so I think in the first class probably you were not available, but I told you when we were discussing about different data types, that in Python everything is an object, right? So data types is concerned when we are using them as values, but in reality they are all objects only. Okay.
Okay.
The proper official term would be object. Okay, just for the sake of simplicity we end up calling them data types, but they are originally they are objects only.
Okay.
Fine. So so lists can obviously not be your keys, because you could end up using append method or some other method, extend method, some method, and you might end up changing it. right, in its own place, in its own memory location. So that's why it is not allowed to use lists as keys. So there is another version of lists that is immutable or non-modifiable, that is called tuples. Okay, it is very similar to list, behaves very similar to list, but once it is created you cannot modify it. Okay, so tuples are something that you can use as keys. Okay, but very rarely you will use all these types. Okay, most of the time you will be using strings only. Okay, any doubts till now? Okay, so let's proceed. Let's start doing some problems and then understand it even better. So let me create an empty dictionary first. Okay, you can also create empty dictionaries. So you could just say dict is equal to open curly bracket, closed curly bracket, and you have created successfully a empty dictionary. Okay, then let me create two proper dictionaries which have four. Okay, I forgot to mention one more thing. Okay, I told you about the key and value part, right? But collectively what is it called? Okay, the collective key and value pair, what is it called? Okay, in the case of list we were calling these individual components as elements, but in the case of dictionaries we call these components as items. Is it clear? Okay, so here it was elements for these individual values inside the list, but in the case of dictionaries these are collectively called items. If you look inside an item, then you will find two more components, that is key and value. Is it clear? Okay, so now coming back, I've created two dictionaries with 4 items each. Okay, and as you can see these items are also separated using commas. Okay, I could have put everything in one line also. Just for the sake of readability I am writing them in 4 separate lines. Okay, so that very clearly you can read and work with it. Fine. So now what I'll do is just to see what is the type of the data. Let's use the type function and let me show you. The type of switch 1 is dict. Okay, if I check the type of switch 2, that will obviously also be dict. Okay, so it's a dictionary. Now how do I access a particular value? Let's say I want to access the value Cisco iOS from switch 1 dictionary. So what I'll do, I'll mention the name of the dictionary first, just like we were mentioning the name of the list. Just like a list we will also mention the square bracket. Okay, but inside the square bracket in the case of a list we were putting their index numbers, right? But here we will be putting in the key. The key in this case is device type. So if I access it with a key, you will get the associated value out of the dictionary. Okay, similarly, let's say I want to access the username, so I'll get access to my username. What happens if I try and access 0? So it is giving me key error. Because why it is giving me key error? Why it is not throwing some other kind of error? Why is it key error? Anyone?
There is no key named 0.
Because input should be key only. That is
Yeah.
game key.
Yeah, so in the switch 1 itself is a dictionary, and obviously 0 could have been a key if I created a key 0 and had associated some value with it. Then in that case it would work. Okay, but in the case of dictionaries, although we are not associating them with index numbers, it is automatically there in the background, where whenever you are creating a list, index numbers automatically get associated. But here you just cannot be putting in any number and it will work. Okay, it has to be a key inside that dictionary. Fine. So now how do I modify a dictionary? Okay, how do we like we just talked about accessing the dictionary. Now let's talk about modifying the dictionary. So let's say I'll go in just for the sake, I'll recreate the dictionary switch one for you so that you can see it clearly. So let's say the username is currently Amit. So what I'll do is I'll go in, I'll say username, I'll access it and I'll put it equal to a newer value. Let's say I want to change it to admin. Okay, now if I was to check what is in switch 1, you see it was I started with Amit, but now I have admin here. Clear? So in this way you can just access that particular value and assign a new value there. Clear? Any doubts?
Sorry, sir, was it not immutable?
What is immutable?
That it cannot be changed once it is assigned.
First of all, we were talking about keys when we were doing that discussion. It was not about values. And number two, if you are thinking that okay, string is immutable, then am I modifying this string or am I modifying the whole dictionary? I'm just changing replacing this string with another string here, right? Even if we talk about value, okay. So I'm not modifying Amit to be something else. I'm just replacing it with the new value. Clear? And dictionary itself, that's a good point by the way that you raised. Dictionary itself is mutable. Okay, it is changeable in its own place. Dictionary itself. Okay, that discussion about immutable objects was in respect of the keys only. Fine. So let's try to change one more. Yeah.
Question there just actually. Can you just show an example? What can't be or what is like immutable when you say like immutable? Can you show that with an example?
Yeah, we were doing that just now, right? So when I was trying to modify name here, I created name equal to this string Liz, but when I capitalized it, if I were to still check the name Liz, it would have still been Liz only. I showed that to you, right? So I had to save it in a new variable too if I wanted to save it. Understood?
I was expecting something different. Yeah.
Yeah. Once created, cannot be modified in its own memory location, in its own place. That's basically the definition. Okay, immutable. Mutable means once created, I am accessing that same variable. Okay, but the value got changed. Okay, there was one change, like one of the items got changed. Fine. So let's say I want to change the IP also. So let's say I want to change it to 192.168.25.10. okay, so now if I check switch 1 again, the IP is also modified. Clear? Okay. So now this is how you can modify the elements, the existing elements. Yes, Mukesh.
You have said that item thing. It's,
Yeah.
in the switch one, The whole
Huh?
thing device types square. So everything is item, or item is only the one line.
So if I highlight like this two components, okay, after like items first of all are separated by commas. Okay, so this whole thing, this is the first item, the portion that I've
That one
highlighted.
four items.
Yeah, key and value pair is called an item. Understood? So this item is separated with a comma from this item.
Only
Okay.
value is changeable, or this uh, uh, like you have changed the IP address. So can we
Yeah,
change the IP? IP means the word IP.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? You cannot. You can obviously remove IP if you want to, but why would you
But
want
we
to
can
change? If you want to
only
add,
value we can change.
like instead of IP, let's say you want to have one more key called IPv4, let's say, okay. So in that case, coming to the topic that I was anyways coming to, is you can add new what you say items by doing this. So let's say I can add secret as a new item with the associate as a new key value pair. So secret is not existing in this switch one, as you can see. Okay, so I'm going to add a new one. Okay, so if I do switch one, now the switch one dictionary is modified. Okay, in a similar way I could have added IPv4, IPv6, whatever. We don't even need to change the key, right? Yeah, and that is also the idea behind dictionary, right? Why we never want to change the key, we always want to change the value only. You can, because always we can keep adding newer keys, right? Let's say NTP is not there, so we can just write this code and NTP as a key as a new item will get added. Clear? So in a similar way, like this is the current switch one dictionary. Let's say I have another dictionary called extra details, okay, which has like these three more items in it. Okay, so let's say I want to update my original dictionary, or I want to add this new dictionary extra details to my original dictionary switch one. Okay, so I can simply use the update method. Okay, so I've already started using methods, dictionary methods. Now if I check switch one, my switch one will have these three new items also in it. Okay, now in the modern Python, what is common to see is that they, whatever order we are working in, everything remains kind of in order only. Okay, from the very beginning these were the first four items, and then I added these two in a one by one manner, and then I added these last three with a single dictionary merge kind of a thing, updating my main dictionary with a newer dictionary, and they are staying in order. But in reality, dictionaries don't really need a sense of order or anything like that. Okay, dictionaries don't have to do anything with order. Okay, they don't need to remain in order, and you also will never need that order. You are anyways going to access your values using the keys. Okay, yeah, Ajit, you're asking something.
Yes, I have one query. Can we rename a dictionary? Means, can we assign new name to dictionary, or it is also not possible?
Yeah, good point, I will discuss that. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
anything else, guys? Any other question? Okay. Huh? Yeah, good point. That's the next topic. So if you want to, let's say I want to delete this particular item from it. So all I have to do is I have to use the delete function, and I'll give the input of switch 1, and from switch 1 remove this key. So if I do that, and if I check what is in switch 1 now, VTY0 is removed. Clear? That is how you can remove from it. Let me delete, let's say let me delete secret password from this. So all I'll do is use the delete function. So switch 1, and from switch 1 delete secret. Okay, now if I check switch 1 again, you can see after username password directly NTP is coming now. Secret is gone. Clear? If I want to, let's say, clear out all the items that are there in the dictionary, okay, so I can just use one method called clear method. Okay, and if I do that and check what is left in switch 1 now, it is an empty dictionary. All clear with the clear method? Okay, now about dictionaries, there is one more aspect that you can use. So we still have that dictionary switch 2 intact, right? So if you remember, let me just recreate it. Okay, so if I create this dictionary, I can even query the dictionary. Okay, I can query it in a way asking something like, is password in switch 2, and it will give me true, because a key named password is there in the dictionary switch 2. Clear? Similarly, if I ask it something like, let's say, protocol in switch 2, and it will tell me false. Now I've introduced a new keyword to you in, but as you can see, it is also being identified and it is given a special color. So in is a keyword in Python. Okay, it means something for the Python interpreter. Okay, so slowly and steadily we'll keep introducing these new keywords, and as you might see, it is very logical. These keywords are very logical in Python. Okay, so we can query the dictionary also. Okay, so now if I were to ask you that, tell me what are all the components of a dictionary. Okay, can anyone answer that question?
Key and value, these two.
Dictionary
Okay.
name.
Dictionary,
dictionary-
name items. Item contains key and value.
Yes, a dictionary name itself is just a variable name. Okay, don't be too much concerned with the dictionary name. Okay, name is just the name. It is just like any other variable. Okay, a string will also have a variable name, list will also have a variable name, float can also have a variable name, anything can have a variable name. Okay, so that is just a variable name, just like any other object. So name is not a component, but inside a dictionary you can at a high level say 3 components, right? At the higher level, item, and then inside the item we have key and value, as Ajit mentioned. So 3 components. Okay, now sometimes there might be scenarios where you would want to access a particular component from the dictionary. Okay, and when I say component, it means like from all the items you would want to access that component. Okay, so let's say I want to access all the keys out of my dictionary. So if I say give me switch2 dot keys, I'm using the keys method. The name of the component is also keys, the name of the method is also keys. So I'm running the keys method on the switch to dictionary, and when I run this, as you can see, I got access to all my keys. Now you might be a little bit confused looking at this output, right? You might be thinking, this looks like a list also, all the keys have been given to me as a list also, but then why do we have this dict keys mentioned, and then why are these brackets mentioned? This looks like a like a function a function has been called, right? But it is not a function called actually. It is just how this object is written. Okay, now this is a different type of object. Okay, so if I were to check what is the type of switch2 dot keys, it is dict keys. So it is a totally different type of object. So list is one object, dictionaries is one object, dict underscore keys is a different object. Okay, but this object looks and behaves very similar to a list, and you can very easily use a list object. I could like have a different variable, and I could say give me the list form of switch2 dot keys. And now if I print, let's say, switch2 keys, I'll get it as a list. So very easily convertible to a list. Okay, and further we'll in further topics we'll be working with loops. So with loops, you as easily as you can iterate over a list, in a similar way you will be able to iterate over dict keys object also. Okay, so it's very similar to list. So I hope there are no doubts in this. Okay, in a similar way, let's proceed and let's access all the values. Okay, so if I were to ask for all the values, okay, value, I'll use the values method and I'll get all my values. You can see from the dictionary, right? Where did it go? Cisco iOS 25.12 IP Amit and Cisco. Cisco iOS 25.12 Amit and Cisco. You see all the values. Similar way, the type of this object is dict underscore values. It is a different type of object, but again very easily you can use the list function to convert it into a list. Not a big deal. Okay. Now let's say you want to access all the items. Okay, so how can you access individual items out of a dictionary? You will use the items method. Okay, like with Python you will feel that it is very logically written. Okay, whatever feels right to the reader, they have written it in that way. Okay, so this is items. So dict items, again different type of object, but inside it you will find a list, and inside the list every element itself is a tuple. Now this is an example of a tuple. Okay, why they used a tuple? Because number one, they don't want to change the order, they want to keep a fixed order of both the key and value should appear like in this order only. Key should come first, value should come second, and then they don't want it to get modified also. So that's why they ended up using tuples. So in this way you can access your individual items. Again, just use the list method, list function, and you can convert it into a list. Okay, just to show you, I will quickly write a piece of code, and you can do it like this. Okay, so you have access to a list now. Any doubts? Okay, Now someone was asking me changing the variable name. Okay, now the same logic that we were using in the lists, right? I could be saying a equal to switch 2, for example. What will this achieve? Who asked that doubt to me? Mukesh, probably Krishna. Who was asking that doubt? Rabijit. I think Mukesh, you asked me, right? So you guys asked, someone out of you, not naming themselves now, but you guys were asking me how can we change the variable name. Okay, it is just like any other variable, any other name for any other object. So if I were to assign a switch 2 to a, switch 2 to variable a, you all understand, right? What will happen? Anyone? Anyone?
Another dictionary will be created with the name A.
Anyone else?
Same
The address
same
of
dictionary
the
as switch
switch,
2 will
the
be assigned
address
to
of switch 2
variable
is
A.
changed to A.
Yeah,
Located to A.
yeah. Wherever this list switch 2 is created in the memory, the address of that memory location will get transferred to A. Okay. So then if I make a change in A, we will also end up changing switch 2. Okay. The same logic, just like list. Okay, let me do this. A equal to switch 2. Let me at this point quickly show you switch 2 first. Okay, let me quickly show you A. Same thing, exactly same thing, but now let me just modify A. Okay, let me say in A the let's say the device type, sorry, the device type instead of Cisco iOS is, let's say, Junos. Okay, I run this. A will obviously get modified. It has become Junos, but switch 2 also got modified to Junos. Clear? So how do you properly assign the values instead of assigning the address of the memory location? How do you properly assign the values? You can do something like, you can say C is equal to switch 2 dot copy. Copy method will just copy all the items from the switch 2 dictionary and create a new dictionary and assign that to C. Okay, so then if I make any change to C, it will not make a change in switch 2. Okay, if in C, let's say I add one I add one item, login local. Okay, after that C will obviously get modified, one new item got added, but if I check switch 2, sorry, nothing changed there. Clear? Any doubts now? Who asked that question? Who was asking that question? Can we change variable name? So whenever you are assigning, like, I'm not saying that this is the wrong way, which is the wrong way or which is the right way. Okay, this can also be the right way. It just depends on the fact that are you okay with like, if you are assigning, if you modify one of them, the other will also get modified. So if you are okay with that, if that doesn't affect your particular use case, then it's okay in changing it this way. Okay, but if you want them to be two different dictionaries in two different memory locations, where if you change one it should not affect the other one, because you might want to use the original dictionary again. In that case, do it properly by using methods like copy. Is it clear? Any doubts? Okay. So this was your dictionaries topic. It will come again. We'll be using list. We'll be using dictionaries again and again. Okay, a lot of times in our journey, and in your journey also, you will be using. So for now, let's move on to the next topic. That is Python packages. Okay, or libraries. So we'll just see them in a new light. We'll learn how to use packages in our scripts or in our code. Okay, so anyone wants to help me out by telling me what are these Python packages or what are libraries? Anyone?
Already written codes.
Yeah, Upendra, yeah.
One is one library is pandas, and another is
You're just naming the libraries. I'm just trying to understand what are these libraries or packages. Okay. Anyways, I'll do it. Okay. So in the most simplistic language, if I had to put it, package or a library is nothing but other people's code that we use to solve our problems. Okay, so someone has written code and given and packaged it so that others can use it. Okay, we can use it. Okay, that's the general idea about what packages are. Very simple, straightforward. Okay, nothing complex. But the structure of these packages itself can be a little bit complex. Okay, so sometimes these packages are called packages, sometimes they are called libraries, sometimes they are called modules also. Okay, but in reality, if you will go ahead and check the structure of any package, I'll show you one. Generally what you will find is whatever the name of the package is, let's call it package A. So if you go inside the package, you will find another folder called package A, same name. Okay, inside that folder you will find either a single script or maybe a bunch of scripts. Okay, these individual scripts that you will find are called modules. Module 1.py, module 2.py, and so on. Okay, depending on what all things that package is going to accomplish, there might be single script also, very in a simple package, but there can be probably thousands of scripts also. But at the end of the day, these scripts are just collectively working to achieve your use cases. Okay, they are, these modules are going to call each other in the code written inside any one particular script, and they are going to achieve a particular functionality, get the job done for you. Okay, that's the high level thing. Okay, let's quickly look at one of the libraries that is very famous amongst network engineers, that is NetMiko. Okay, so if I just open NetMiko on GitHub, okay, so you see the main folder NetMiko has another folder NetMiko in it. Okay, so these are all helping files where people can read through it, like readme.md is one of the files where you can read and understand what this library does, and some help text to get you started with this particular library. But as I was telling about the structure of the package, it is just like any other folder that you have on your PC, which is represented on this GitHub website. So don't get confused. In the package folder, you will have another folder with the same name, NetMiko. But when you go inside NetMiko, either you will have folders or you will have individual scripts. Okay, so these scripts are what you call modules. When you go inside a particular folder, there also, let's say I'll go inside, let's go in any random folder, probably Aruba. Okay, so in Aruba you will find another script. Okay, so this also is a module, okay, with a special purpose. Fine, so that's the high level structure of these packages. Okay, so then obviously we have discussed packages multiple times. All those things apply again. Multiple people can contribute to these packages. Most of them are open source, but obviously companies have internal packages also for certain cases where like probably they want to maintain higher level of secrecy or higher level of they want to be sure about everything. Then in that case, sometimes companies can create their own packages also if they have specialized products or anything like that. But most of the times people use these open source packages only, and these packages are also secure only. Why they are secure? Because the code is open source, like anyone can come in and anyone can check what is the code. Even when you download them and install them on your PC, as we were discussing earlier using pip, then also you can check all the files. You can check, and you are not going to run the whole package at once. You are just going to import it in your code. You are going to run individual functions only. So you can just go inside the code and you can see what a particular function is doing. Okay, so it is, since it is open source, it is very obvious that people must have gone through it, must have read it, and verified before using. So that's why very low, very low probability that it might have a some kind of a security flaw. They can have security flaw in the aspect that they might be using other libraries which might not have covered a particular security flaw, but at a high level, I have personally not seen if a package has created security related problems. Okay, so to say. Yeah, any doubts about the package structure? Okay, so let's move on to how we use these packages. Okay, so one such package that is available with you when you download Python, there are certain packages which they realize that everyone is going to use, everyone is downloading them, so certain packages also get downloaded. Okay, one such package is the getpass package. Okay, you don't need to do pip install getpass, it comes within. Okay, so you can use the package getpass. Okay, and I'm importing the whole package getpass now. Okay, in my script, let's just consider this is a Python script. I have imported getpass. The package name is getpass. I have imported it in my Python script. So this is the first way you can import the package, that is importing the whole package. Okay, now this getpass package has another function with the name getPass inside it. Okay. So let's say I want to use that function getPass, and let me tell you what is the job of this library. This library has a very simple job, that you can use it to take input of passwords from people. Okay. What it does is, when you will give inputs, when you will type your password, it will not show up on your screen. Okay, so that no one else can read when you are typing it. That's the only job. So you can give your prompt, whatever prompt you want. Okay, so I'm using this function getPass, which is like in the library getPass. Okay, and I've given a custom prompt that I want. So when I run this, I get an error. Okay, and the error is it is saying module object is not callable. Basically something to do with calling the function. So my Python script was not able to get hold of the getPass function and was not able to access the code behind it and run it. But when I use print function or when I use type function directly, we were able to do those, right? Because they were part of the inbuilt functions. But this getPass function is part of the getPass library. Okay, the getPass function lives within the getPass library. Okay, so how do I access the getPass function from the getPass library in the scenario when I have imported the whole library itself? So what I have to do in this case is, I will have to first mention the name of the library, then put a dot, and then mention the name of the function getPass within the library, and then whatever prompt, if I want to give or if I don't want to give, that is a different matter. Okay, let's say this is the prompt I want to give. Now when I run this, I am able to run it, and as you can see, I got this prompt device pass, and whatever I type, it doesn't show up. Okay, and as soon as I hit enter, this is what I typed. I'm able to get it, but it did not appear on the screen. Now this is IPython notebook within the Visual Studio Code, but in the real world this will be happening inside a terminal. Okay, so in the terminal, let me try and show you how you can run it in a terminal.
When we import the library, right, we import the whole library, and from that library we are just utilizing one function getPass. So when we are using that function, it's not going through the whole library, like
yeah, the Python interpreter, the Python interpreter tries to look for that function in the inbuilt library. So by default, if you are not telling the interpreter in any way that where to look for that function, it is going to try and search in the inbuilt library. Okay, where print function exists, where type function, id function, all these string function, list function, all these default functions exist, it is going to try and look there. Okay, but we
already imported, right? It's import getPass. So
yeah, but still we are not telling the interpreter where to find getPass function, right?
Okay, so explicitly we need to mention, right?
Yeah, explicitly we need to mention. So in the real world, in terminals, it is not going to work like this. So let me just quickly show you in a terminal how this looks. Okay, so when I run this code, a prompt like this would appear in your terminal. Okay, and whatever input you give here, I've typed already, but you see that cursor is not moving at all. When I hit enter, you see this is what I typed from my keyboard. Okay, so that's the only job the getPass library or the getPass function achieves for us. Clear? So let's move on. Now this is the first way of doing it, and as you can see, this is the drawback, that if you import the complete library, when you want to use a function from that library, you will still have to explicitly tell the Python interpreter that go and look for this function within this library, okay, by writing it like 2 times, getPass dot getPass. And don't get confused, this looks very similar to a method syntax, but this is not a method syntax, this is library, this is the function name. Clear? Now let's say you have to get multiple passwords, you have to use it multiple times in your code. In that case, writing this again and again, the code, if you have to write again and again, it might be difficult. So the second method that you can use to save some time is, you can say import getPass as GP. Okay. Now the benefit of doing this is just that instead of saying getPass, now you can say gp.getPass. So for the scope of my Python script, the name of getPass library is just GP. So within my script I can keep using GP for the getPass this thing. Okay, so if I run this, it will give me a default prompt, and whatever I type here, enter, I'll get it. Clear? This time the syntax is a little bit shortened. Clear? But still, sometimes what happens is that you are going to use a particular library only for one function from that library. Okay, from a library can have multiple functions, but sometimes you just need to use one function out of that library. So in that case, what can you do is, you can say from getPass import getPass. So now in my script, what I have done is, I have imported just one function out of the whole library getPass. The benefit of doing this is that now if I directly call the getPass function within my script, it will work. You see, it worked. Whatever I give input, enter, it is working. Is it clear? But this is just for the scope of my Python script. Okay. Any doubts till now?
So if someone else wants to use your Python script, then he has to import the same, like from getPass.
No. If someone wants to use my Python script, they just have to have that package with them. Okay. Why they don't need to modify my script, right? In my script, whatever statement I have mentioned, it will work. Okay.
Oh, I got confused that you said it's only the scope of only this file. So
Yeah, that is right. So if I hand over that script to you, and if you have getPass library in your PC, the script will work. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Clear? So So just to solidify this, let's do some quick problem. Okay, 2 problems, and then we'll be done for today. So just like get pass package, math is also a package that comes built in. For math also you don't need to do pip install math. Okay, this also comes inbuilt. Okay, but it is obviously a separate package. Okay, but it comes with the Python installation. So what I want you to do first is I want you to calculate the circumference and the area of a circle which has a radius of 0.43. So the value of the variable r will have 0.43. Now why we need the math package for this? We some of you might know the value of pi is 3.14 and all, but I want you to use the value of pi from the math package. So math package has the value of pi in it. Okay, so I've given a hint also that once you import the whole math package, how you can use the get access to the value of pi from the math package. So the formula is written in front of you, and the value for r is given to you. Just import the math package and get access to the value of pi and do these 2 calculations and print it out. Clear? Okay, so most of you are done, so I'll also do it. So what you had to do was you had to import the math package. Okay, and then the value of r was given, which is 0.43, right? So to calculate, let's say c, the circumference, the first formula was 2 pi r. So as I said, you could access the value of pi from the math package by doing math.pi and then multiply that with r to get your circumference, and then your area was equal to pi r square. So again math dot pi multiplied by r square, so r raised to the power of 2, and then you can print nicely. You can say circumference plus string of c you can say area plus string of a. So these are your answers. Now while we are at it, I'll tell you one more thing. If you see, if you notice, to print these 2 things, it was slightly difficult. I had to do the conversion. So there are 2 ways around this problem. Okay, while we are at it, let's solve this also. Instead of using plus, if you just use comma here, okay, if you just use comma, you most of the times would not need conversion. Okay, and your code will work. Okay, then the other thing, the only slight problem is that if you use comma, 1 extra space will automatically get put. So if you want more control, okay, while printing out something, there is something called f strings that you guys can use. Okay, so instead of creating a string, you can create a f string, okay, with a f flag attached to it. And in that, now what you can do is you can say circumference colon then space, and then basically here you want to introduce a new value, right? So I want to introduce the value C here, right? So what I can do, I can just put that variable C within the curly brackets. Okay, so now if I print it, I get the same output, and conversion is also done automatically in the case of f strings. Okay, so these are easier ways of doing things like these, but yeah, that at that time to learn the concept was also important, so I did not tell you, but obviously there are better ways of doing it. Okay, this is the best way, f string. There were other ways also, which we'll discuss with time. There is a dot format method, there is a percent style of doing it. We'll discuss in the scripts, but yeah, f string is the most advanced. It probably came out in Python 3.6, so this is the most advanced method of doing it, and in very less number of characters you can achieve it. Okay, let's quickly do the problem number 2, and then we'll be done. So here this is a let me explain this problem to you. So basically here this is a problem of selective import. So you, again, it is the math package, but you have to selectively import a function called radians out of the math package. And why you will need it? Let's say this is earth and this is moon. Okay, so the moon, as you might see, it is at a particular distance from earth, right? So that distance is given to you as r, which has the value of I'll tell you the value. It is 192,500. Okay, so now this, as you might already know, the moon moves around the earth. Okay, so I want you to calculate this distance if this angle is given to you in radians. Okay, so this angle is given to you in degrees at this point. I want you to first convert 12 degrees to radians and then use it in this formula where r is 192,500 and p will be the value of this angle in radians, and if you multiply these two, you will get your distance traveled by the moon around the earth. Okay, this is your distance which you have to calculate, dist, and then print it out nicely. Okay, you can use f string this time to print it out nicely. Let's see. Okay, I'll do it now. Okay, now this problem was of selective import. Okay, so I wanted you to selectively import the radians function out of the math package. Okay, so I had given you the value of r, which is 192,500, which is, by the way, in kilometers, the distance between earth and moon. Then p is the radians value of the 12 degrees angle that moon has traveled. So we'll use the radians function here to do that conversion, and then to find out the distance traveled by the moon, you had to do r multiplied by p. Okay, then you could use the print function to print it out nicely by using f strings. You can say something like distance traveled colon space curly brackets and the variable dist. Okay, or you can modify it further by saying distance traveled by moon around earth. Okay, clear, guys? Any doubts?
For practice, we just refer that link, or you will provide some document also.
Yeah, just refer that link. Okay.
What about these classes? Only videos? Because
No, no,
different different.
you'll get these files. You'll get all these files. Don't worry. Okay, this is basically a Google Drive. Okay, all these files are in the Google Drive. It is just the problem that you would have gotten access by now. I'll share this link with you very soon in your account only with the videos. So you'll get the link. Okay.
Amit, in the
Yeah.
learn.networkings portal, I can see
Yeah.
your class, but when I click on that, it's saying this class is expired. Go to store for buying it.
I think that is some admin related issue. You can just contact on Monday the networking team. They'll solve it for you. Okay.
Is the videos already uploaded?
Yeah, two videos are uploaded. Third and fourth will get uploaded tomorrow.
And so
Okay.
the full name of the course is Python for Network Engineers.
Plus, I
CCNP
think
and auto.
yeah, plus CCNP and auto. But I think for you the course name would be simply something like December, something like that. Python December batch, something like that. It might be.
Python for Network Engineer upcoming 2022. Is it
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, something like that. Upcoming. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Fine. So I'll stop the recording. If you guys don't have any doubts.